No. vis-à-vis. 낮에는 여기가 문이 열리고 저는
Good morning, welcome to Quack Talk. I'm Crystal here on Think Tech, Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock. We today are going to talk about the oldest profession in the world, which hasn't changed, but has morphed into different concepts. But today it's really interesting. It's a historical look at it. We're going to talk about prostitution during World War II, specifically in Chinatown. So you're thinking, all right, Chinatown, oh, you know, all those like dirty little stalls with the Chinese women catering to all the sleazy Asian men. Well, to my surprise, there is a huge supply and demand during the war for the Navy, for all the guys who are there. And so really, really interesting stuff. Join us now. We're going to talk about this whole exposed Honolulu, little dirty kind of an alley that we should talk about. So our wonderful guest today is Carter Churchfield, who actually conducts tours in Chinatown specifically to cover the red light district, right?
The seedy side of World War II.
Love it, love it. What's not seedy about it? Well, let's talk about it.
Well, I've been doing these tours for about 3 years.
Okay.
And before this, I was giving tours in Seattle, Washington. So I learned a lot about prostitution in the Wild West. And you might be surprised, a lot of the traditions from the Wild West made it to Honolulu for the World War II prostitution ring in Chinatown.
Wait, so they traveled from Seattle to come over because there was like a new business opportunity, so to speak?
Well, San Francisco specifically. Now, prostitutes have been an export of San Francisco for a while. That's where Seattle got its prostitutes from, Portland, and then plenty of the places during the gold rush.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why San Francisco? Because why did it start there?
Well, the railroads came from the East Coast, and enough of them ended in San Francisco, and it was an established city. Oh, and then the gold rush, that was what first brought people over.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just catering to Asian men. We're talking about gold rush. I think, you know, the coolies coming over, but then there are all the people who kind of came in from the Midwest and...
Right, and even the Civil War, that wiped out a generation of menfolk, so the women had to support themselves, sometimes support children, and historically that put a lot of women, sent a lot of women out west, hoping to make enough money, send it back home.
Right.
Yeah, to feed themselves, feed their families.
So before we jump into the World War II business, right before that, what was Chinatown like? I mean, there's always been prostitution, and I don't know why it kind of likes to center around places like Chinatown. But what was it like, and what's the difference between the pre and post-war time?
Well, it was more of a business district. The red light district was actually Evile, which is where the Dole Cannery is today, and you know, the movie theater.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so easy to remember. You can think of it as Easy Lay. And,
is that your coin's term?
Yes. Okay. And that was before the sailors came, before the military came. So it was mostly Asian women because their customers were the plantation workers. Yeah, so men from China, Japan, Korea, and they want to be able to talk to women in their own language. Often in situations like this, they're not just after physical satisfaction, they're looking for some kind of emotional interaction too.
That's interesting, because usually when you think of prostitution, you think wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You don't want to have that connection. But you're talking about a different type of kind of a companion.
Yes, and there's a range. There's a range of customers. There's a range of service providers, and a lot seem to go for an emotional connection as well.
Okay, well that's good. That's promising that not all men are bastards. So
no,
they need a little
I'm
more.
not going there. No.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But so we say they catered to the Asians. So these Asian ladies were from Hawaii, or they came also from the mainland?
No, they came from Asia. Yeah.
How'd they come over?
Boats.
Like,
So
like
you know, the madams would get here, set up shop. They want to recruit more women. So I mean, there's a tradition in China. You know, it's not as taboo there to be a prostitute.
Right.
And in Japan too, you can be a prostitute and then maybe go be a wife. And in the West, it changes everything. There's before and after, and you can never rejoin society. You are soiled. You are you're not a human being anymore.
I think that happens worldwide, though. No,
it's a different mentality in other countries.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we jump to, I hate to jump because there's so much to talk about even before war. Maybe we'll do that another time.
I can get to Chinatown, yeah.
All right.
So basically the cops didn't have very much control in Evile, so they shut it down and kind of reopened it, the red light district in Chinatown. Now the buildings, they're owned by Chinese landlords, and they ended up renting to a lot of Irish madams. Now this is where things shift. The sailors started coming in droves, and these white sailors from the mainland, they want white women. They want the girl next door. So Irish women were being imported through San Francisco.
And good old San Fran.
Yes, that's the supply and demand.
Right.
Now, so it was funny, a lot of these women, the madams, they have clauses in their leases that say if prostitution gets thrown out of the island, they're released from their leases immediately. That way they're not trapped into these expensive leases.
The leases between the landlord
and the madams, yes.
And they know what kind of business they're going to be doing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's all...
And they're making a lot more money renting to a madam than they would a different business.
Quick, huh?
Oh, absolutely. You want? I can tell you how quick the turnover is.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah. So with the introduction of this ridiculous gender ratio, we're talking strictly single men of marriageable age to single women of marriageable age. One of the kinder statistics I read was 156 single men for every one single woman on the island. That is worse than Alaska.
Right.
Yeah, and what they say in situations like that, it's, yes, the odds are good, but the goods are odd if you're a woman.
Quote. But so how did they initiate the whole business kind of flushing over? Was it government backed, or was it just kind of like slowly word of mouth? These mama-sans, well, the Irish mama-sans would say, hey, come on, there's good business over here.
I would think word of mouth really, yes. People letting other people know. And there's precedent for this situation in like the Wild West towns where men greatly outnumber women. So some of the traditions, so to speak, made it out here. For instance, a time limit. And this time limit was usually 3 minutes per man.
Wow.
Yeah. And in some of the World War II towns, it was even 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
But between the men, was there like a time where they could change the sheets, or I don't know?
Well, since it's a numbers game,
yeah.
And now a lot of the women in Hawaii working in this way, they knew that their window for making a ton of money was the war. So because they knew it was going to close, they were trying to get the numbers.
Right.
This leads to a system called the bullpen being imported. The bullpen, again brought from the Wild West, is where each woman had 4 or maybe 5 different rooms.
Okay.
So she'd have a waiting man in each. She could just go from room to room to room. Yeah, pretty sensational stuff.
And these are just your, what did you say, lower class girls from
There's
California?
a range. Now, so they're coming from all over the United States.
Okay,
who
started from, right, okay.
And then they end up in San Francisco, and then they can audition to
You
come
have to
to Hawaii.
audition?
Well, you got to prove you can
Perform?
Yeah, perform within that window.
Okay.
Right? Now, the most famous woman to come out here was Jean O'Hara.
Okay.
She's from Chicago.
All right.
And she is unusual. For instance, she was the daughter of a dentist.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so she...
Oh no, how did her parents feel about this?
Well, she got into the profession, she said, because she wanted the jewelry and the clothing that the ladies could afford. She saw the women down the street and saw their independence. Now, this is a woman who is incredibly feisty, and by the time... So she got into this profession, and then once she decided maybe she wanted to get out, she was too ashamed to go back home. So remember what I said earlier about in the West, in the United States, once your virtue is lost, that changes you. You're not quite
you're labeled
a human being.
Go back,
yeah.
Right. So. But why did she become so famous? What did she do? Was she like the top performer, or what? The men were wanted her?
Well, she wrote an expose. So most women, when they get into the trade, they use fake names because their dream is to get out of the trade and be able to take their money and move to a new place, pass themselves off as a widow and be respectable. But she did not care. She wrote this expose which talks about how this, by the way, illegal prostitution ring, because prostitution's illegal in the territory of Hawaii, is still being run by the cops.
Wait, so if it's not legal, who's this? Was this just a random photo?
This is a random photo. That
looks
looks like a lady enjoying herself. I don't think she was a prostitute because she's out somewhere where she can be photographed.
Right.
And the lives of the prostitutes were highly regulated by the Vice Squad.
Good afternoon, happy Friday. I'm Kaui Lucas. This is Think Tech Hawaii. Hawaii is my mainland, and with me today is Anthony Alto, who wears many hats in this town. Today he's here as the co-producer of No Room in Paradise, which is a 90-minute documentary of our homeless issues here in Honolulu. I've only seen it twice. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. Do you have, I listened to your podcast with Chad Blair, and you mentioned that the trailer had over 1 million views. Wow.
1.1 million at this point, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. But surprisingly, or maybe not, I was surprised that the majority of them were from the continent and not in Hawaii. What else do you know?
Well, not very much. I mean, when people go in to see your trailer, it's not as if they're typing in where they live or why they're watching it from the mainland. But I think it does point to the fact that we have quite a large diaspora of people who were born and raised in Hawaii who now live on the mainland, who still have an interest in things to do with Hawaii. Plus, Hawaii is a place that holds a lot of interest for a lot of people who maybe have never even been here. But when it comes to the diaspora, the fact that you have so many people on the mainland, in fact, a lot of the comments of people who saw the trailer were, I was born and raised in Hawaii, I'd love to move back, but I can't, the cost of housing. And of course, if you're going to be talking about homelessness, then one of the issues you're going to be talking about is the cost of housing. So in a way, I wasn't surprised that there were so many people on the mainland who were watching the trailer.
Any ideas what the viewership was like? It was broadcast several times on 3 different channels, I think.
2 channels, yeah,
2
KGMB, KHNL, the Hawaii News Now channels. I have no way of knowing how many people. Anecdotally, a lot of people are coming up to me. When I went to vote, the lady looked up. She said, "Oh, you're the guy who made that film and the documentary," which was good because we want people to be watching this. We want attention. This was not supposed to be just a sort of documenting the problem, fly on the wall, take a look at this, isn't this problem ghastly kind of thing. We definitely had an activist approach. We had a campaigning desire behind it, which was to change the attitude of the public at large. And the way we wanted to do that was first and foremost to get them to see the homeless as human beings, to understand what they're like. My feeling is, it's not that people instinctively have an antipathy towards the homeless. They just don't know them. They don't talk to them. I think what they see typically is what goes around the homeless. They see their tents, their shanties, often a lot of garbage. So they see that garbage and they sort of think, well, maybe somebody who can live like that must be human garbage. And of course, that's not the case. And I had my own biases going in. One of the things I was surprised about was just how intelligent and articulate a lot of these people are, and how open they are to admitting that they've made mistakes. I mean, some of them will say.
I was shocked. I was really shocked. I thought, wow, I think that's a testament to the way you went about filming it too. I mean, I heard it was 18 months.
Yeah.
That's a long time. You were able to build relationships with these people, but still to get that amount of just bearing their souls was amazing.
It didn't take much effort. I mean, sure, we showed up and we sat down and we treated them like human beings, as equals. We talked to them.
How did you find the people that you spoke with? Did you start with, is his name Joshua?
Justin Phillips, the narrator. Yeah, we did. Well, what happened was Rick Blangiardi from Hawaii News Now, who's a hero in the sense that he is determined to make our community face up to this problem and do something about it. He came to us and asked us to make a documentary. And I think he did it because he understood that he's been running a lot of news clips about the homeless. And I think he realized that he had done a good job in raising awareness about the problem, but that didn't mean that he had necessarily done anything about helping us move to the next step, to start doing what we need to do to address the problem. If anything, I think there's a feeling out there, I don't know that it's ever been poll tested or anything, but there's a feeling out there that people might be getting fatigued, homeless fatigue. Not another news story about the homeless kind of thing,
sure.
Right? So he thought, why don't we do a documentary and look at it more in depth? And we said, yes, of course, we'd love to do it, but we know nothing about the homeless. What are we going to do? So we went to the largest homeless agency in town, which is the Institute for Human Services. We spoke to Connie Mitchell, the executive director there, and we said, Connie, we know nothing, we need an education, can you help us? And she said, well, why don't you go and meet with Justin Phillips, who's our top field outreach guy, and let him introduce you to the streets. And so we followed Justin around for 3 months, and he introduced us to the homeless.
Okay, so
And
I just want to repeat what he said right off the bat, then I knew, okay, this is something really great. When he said, we don't have a homeless crisis, we
Right.
have half a dozen.
Right.
And then he mentioned the mentally ill, he mentioned the Micronesians, he mentioned the addicts, and on and on and on. And I was just like, oh, finally, somebody is not trying to simplify this into meaninglessness. So it's 90 minutes for a good reason.
Right. Rick asked us to do 60 minutes. And after 6 months, we went back to him and we said, it's got to be 90 minutes. Actually, what we asked for, we asked for a week-long series of half-hour specials. And he said, you guys are nuts, forget about it. And then we said, well, how about 90 minutes? And he said, I'll see what I can do. And then, but when he started to see the footage that was coming in and what we were trying to do, he understood. And he said, okay, it's going to cost me an arm and a leg, because don't forget, he showed all of these documentaries in prime time without any commercials. So Hawaii News Now, let go of a fair bit of income that they could have been making in those time slots. So another reason to tip one's hat to Rick Blangiardi.
And I'll just mention that at the end of the show, we'll have information about how you can order a DVD.
By making a donation to IHS, let's make that clear.
Yes.
It's a gift.
Wonderful.
It's a gift. You can get a DVD or video, streaming video on demand if you make a gift. I mean, I shouldn't say you're not allowed to actually predicate it on, but if you make a $15 donation, we will make a gift.
All right. Okay, so back to so 90 Minutes is a really knotty problem with all different angles to it, and you guys dove in and went around and actually met them where they are.
Right. And I think the 90 minutes actually goes by quite fast, precisely because we look at the different aspects. But, well, there are two, for a few reasons. I mean, one, as filmmakers, we knew that we had to tell a story. You know, if we just had talking heads there blathering on about their expert opinion, people would have switched it off pretty fast. So we have two homeless families, single mothers with their children, who serve as the spine, the thread, if you like, from the start of the film to the end of the film. And we follow each of the stages, and they explain why they become homeless. And when you find out that a woman has been raped at 16 and suffered years of domestic abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, until the point where she says enough, and she grabs her 5 kids and leaves the home, leaves the car. I mean, this was a middle-class woman, leaves everything behind and ends up camped out on Kapahulu. That already is getting people, and what does she say? I mean, she says, I know what society thinks of us. I know what I used to think of the homeless. I used to talk, the phrase she uses, I used to talk a lot of crap about the homeless. And now she finds herself in that situation, and she says, you know, we're not what society would think of us. And then she says something that I suspect a lot of people in the audience want to hear, which is, I feel so ashamed. And in fact, the shame isn't hers. The shame is on the man who raped her. The shame is on the boyfriend who beat her up all of those years. But she's the one who's ended up homeless on the streets by the canal, and she feels that shame, and she wants to get off the canal. Unfortunately, as part of this process of going through what she's gone through in her life, she's also became an addict, right? And so we see her dealing with that. And in the film, she gives birth to her 6th child, conceived on the banks of the Kapalama Canal, and it turns out that while she was pregnant, she had been smoking ice. And fortunately, the baby was born without any meth in its system. But so we follow that story from start to finish, and then along the way, we look at some of these other issues. So we look at the issue of the mental health.
Yeah, let's take a moment on that, because the numbers in that were really eye-opening. I commend you for the people you spoke to were great. I'm looking forward to talking to Alan myself for a half hour or so, Johnson. He said it would save $2 billion a year if we had the appropriate care for the seriously mentally ill, and Colin Kippen put that number at 1,300. He said there are 1,300 of our homeless population who are seriously mentally ill. So.
No, not quite. I have to correct you on your number.
Okay.
In Honolulu, on Oahu, we're talking about roughly 1,350 chronically homeless. Chronically homeless are people, essentially the shorthand way of saying, they're the people you see on the streets. Because what you have to understand is that, in fact, they're only the tip of the iceberg. The majority of the homeless are not people who live on the streets. The majority of the homeless are people who are couch surfing, they're living out of their car, at worst, they're living in a homeless shelter. They are not on the streets. You have to be chronically homeless to be living on the streets. So 2/3 of them are people that we never see. Typically, they're people